Hi everyone, it's Ayusia here. It's been quite a while since I last filmed a video. I just thought I'd come on here and do some painting and have a little chat. I'm painting some flowers. I'll explain why in a minute. So I've just discovered that I can't find my favourite brush. Found it, but it's a bit worse for wear because it was scrunched up in a bag. I should take better care of my brushes. It's actually a number 10 round brush. I don't know, I'm very attached to that size. I don't really like to use anything else. So, oops, I just dropped something. Yeah, so I have my brush. So yes, the last video I made, I said I think we were about to go off on holiday to Wales, and then I was going to reopen my Etsy shop at the beginning of September. But sadly, 3 days into our holiday, we had to return home because my husband's mum had taken a turn for the worse. So she's been in a nursing home. She had been in a nursing home for a few years with Parkinson's disease. She seemed pretty stable as you can be in the later stages of the disease. But then all of a sudden, the nursing home rang to say she had stopped eating and drinking. And so 3 days into a holiday, we drove straight back to London, and then we spent the next 11 days by her bedside. And then she passed away, which has been very, very sad for us. And it's a difficult one because it's kind of expected, at some point, but obviously when it happens, it's just very, very sad. It's very, very, very hard to watch someone you love dying and then to be without them after that. So the last 3 weeks, three and a bit weeks, have been really, really difficult. So the reason I'm painting these flowers today is because I want to design a thank you card to send to everyone who's been so kind to us. And in fact, this particular bouquet of flowers was organised by a friend of my mother-in-law's for her funeral. So I might put a little reference photo of what I'm painting from coming up in a minute, around about now. And I thought it might be quite nice to try to paint something, not a literal, representation of the flowers, but more like a feel of them, as and then to send out as a thank you card. So that's what I'm doing. But I did also want to come on here anyway, just to have a chat and to explain my absence, because it feels like it has actually been quite a while. And I don't like saying I'll do something and then not do it. So I did say I'd open my shop, but then obviously we just couldn't. It's just too much. We've just been, it's just been very, very difficult time. We loved her very much, and we're just getting used to life without her. And especially, it's one thing seeing my husband lose his mum and just feel his pain and his sadness, but also for me, even she's been in my life since I was 18, so she was kind of like a mum to me as well. So it's just it's just been a really sad time, I must say. But I'm very, very grateful for the time that we did. I'm glad we came back from our holiday when we did. She really held on, and she's all family were able to come and be with her. My husband's twin brother flew back from Canada, and I'm so grateful that he made it on time, and had some time with her and my girls. It was just like a really heartbreaking but also very precious time, just singing to her, being with her, and she knew we were there, and just helping her in a way, like reassuring her. It's just really humbling to to be with someone in that moment, you know, in that time, and to be able to communicate to someone how much you love them. And it's a good feeling, and it's very comforting to feel like nothing was left unsaid. So yeah, I thought I would come on here and just be having a chatty video, but actually just talking about it, I do feel really sad, so do forgive me if I'm not as chatty as I could be. I think these things kind of take you a little bit by surprise, like how sad you can feel. It's not it's not an unfamiliar thing. You know, we've lost loved ones before, my dad, my husband's dad, but each one is especially painful in its own way, I suppose, because each person that you have a relationship with is a unique relationship. So you kind of think, I'm prepared for it, I'm prepared for how this is going to feel, but then it never, you're just not really, are you? That's just life. So I'm painting roses and lilies because my mother-in-law, Margot's her name, she lived, and you've heard me talk about Nana Lily and her, you know, Nana Lily's knitting. Nana Lily was Margot's mum, and they both lived in a cottage called Lily Rose Cottage. And I think my love of roses really came about because of them both. Nana Lily had a beautiful rose garden, and yeah, and then the cottage was called Lily Rose Cottage, and so we had 2 services for my mother-in-law, and both times the flowers had lilies and roses in them. So I thought that was especially lovely. So that's why I'm painting these, and if it turns out okay, then I'll scan this in and make it into a design for a thank you card. But it's good to finally feel settled enough to actually paint, which is you know, it's a nice thing, because we only got back at the weekend because we had both funeral services were last week. So the first service was in London, and then we took her ashes back to Shropshire, which is where her home was, like where Lily Rose Cottage was in Shropshire in the Midlands. And we had a service there. That was really beautiful, because it meant that all her friends who hadn't seen her for a while were able to come and say goodbye, and it felt really good to return her back to Shropshire. And it's really strange because whilst we were on holiday, in fact it's really weird, because we were there as soon as we got to Wales, I did not feel myself. I felt really out of sorts. In fact, I felt out of sorts before we went, and I didn't know why. And just feeling like, you know, there was a time of transition, just felt really unsettled. And whilst we were in Wales, oh, by the way, this is like a little art journal I made using a bit of a leather satchel that I had, so I've just cut off a bit of it. I'm using the original buckle. That's quite, I don't know, it makes me happy. And it's a little dinky journal. I made this page about finding my way home, like, you know, sort of returning. And it's really interesting that we went through this process with Marg. I remember that, you know, during her whole time of being at the nursing home, because she was in a nursing home in London, she just really longed for home. And I don't know, I can't talk about it without feeling really sad, without feeling really tearful. Do forgive me, but she really longed to be back in Shropshire, you know, in the village, back at the cottage, and obviously she couldn't be. So it felt really good, like we'd come full circle, returning her ashes back to the village. And she is in the churchyard in the village, and So yeah, it felt like she found her way home in a way. So it's really interesting that I was painting this a few days before we knew that we had to come back to London. That's another page I painted whilst we were away. And this page I painted, I can't remember when, but this one I painted whilst on one of the days where we were with Marg, and we, you know, the room was just silent except the sound of her breath. So that was on the 28th of August. And yeah, it just says breath, the intake and the outtake. Each one is a mercy. The spirit of a mother and her unceasing love through every season fills the room. And it did feel like that. It felt like Marg's spirit was so strong in that room. And even though her body was failing her, her spirit was so strong, and we really felt her love and her strength and her courage. And I feel like it's left me changed. I can't explain how, but just, you know, just realizing what is truly important, you know, like at the end of a life, what is the really important thing. It's who you are. It's like the love that you carried, the love that you gave your family and your friends, and just, you know, different people telling us stories about Marg and just her commitment, you know, like, yeah, it's just too many really to say on here, but it's just been a really special time in a way, even though it has been very sad, of just remembering and for me personally, just remembering what's important, because we can get so bogged down with a feeling of, am I doing well, or am I succeeding at the XYZ? And then you realize that the things that you're going to be remembered for are not particularly those things, even though, you know, that everything is all, it's not that they're not important, you know, but what you're usually remembered for is your kindness and who you were as a mum and a grandma, and yeah, and a friend, and just more, I suppose, eternal things rather than your career. And she did have a marvellous career. She was an actress, really beautiful. But yeah, those things are part of us, you know, part of a story, but they're not, I don't think anyway, that they're the main event. I think the things that people remember are your character and just seemingly fleeting things, actually, that people would remember and go, that really impacted me. So it's been a good lesson for me personally as well, you know, just reminding myself of what's important and how I would like to be remembered and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so I have gone over it with a really fine, outlined it with a really fine pen with a 0.05 waterproof ink pen. And I think it needed that, because I'd sketched it, it needed the outline. And then since then I've just added in more colour, and I'm sort of painting in a background. I'm trying to suggest that these flowers are part of a bigger bunch around them. So I'm starting to feel a bit better about it now. My oldest daughter Daniela is going off to university at the end of next week, and so that's a bit more change coming up. I think I'm going to be very emotional when because she's effectively leaving home, you know. It's like it's a really big thing. So we've just been trying to get her organised for the last, well, we've been away with, you know, with the funeral, and so it's all very last minute getting Daniela organised. So with this week being back, we're just sort of sorting all of that stuff out, just buying all all her stuff. I'm teaching her, been giving her cooking lessons because she's going to be staying in self-catering accommodation, so she's gonna need to cook for herself, and you know, buying all the pots and pans and all, you know, all that practical stuff. And so yeah, it's all happening really over here. But I'm hoping that now that we're back, to get back into, well, it won't be a bit of normality until after the end of next week. We say goodbye to Daniela, and then yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure when to say that my shop will be open, because I don't want to make false promises, but definitely hopefully things will be back to some semblance of normality probably, yeah, at the end of September. So yes, I've almost finished. Actually, I have finished. I've a couple of journals that I was working on before we went away. At the end of, I can't remember when it was, before we went to Wales anyway. And so if I can get organised, then I'll do a flip through and reopen my shop for that. But we'll see. I'm being very kind to myself at the moment. I don't want to put myself under too much pressure, because that's the way it goes sometimes. I'm just learning to be kind. Yeah, so I think I'm pretty much done. I'm going to let this dry and then go. I'll probably use a white pen to add a few details, and then you'll see a photo of the finished piece at the end. But yeah, thanks for joining me today. It's been good to come back on here and say hello, and yeah, sending you lots and lots of love, and hopefully I should be back very soon. Okay, bye bye.